All right, thanks for staying with us. Now, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua finds himself once again navigating the legal landscape as he seeks to block the impending impeachment motion set for deliberation in the Senate this coming week. In an urgent application submitted to the Milimani High Court, the DP outlines a series of at least 10 grievances which he claims highlight an unfair process aimed at undermining him. He's calling on the court to issue an order preventing the Senate from advancing with the impeachment hearing. Now, considering this marks about 24 attempts, either personally or through intermediaries, to thwart his removal from office, with previous legal efforts yielding little success, it will be interesting to see the court's decision. And to understand the legalities surrounding this process, I'm joined by legal experts this evening in studio. Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate of the High Court, thank you for joining us once again. Kibe Mungai is also joining us, constitutional lawyer. Thank you for making the time for us. Now, considering what we've seen and the developments so far on the impeachment of the Deputy President, I'll begin with you, Wakili Ishmael. Your initial thoughts on where we are at this point?
Yeah, I think, the Deputy President is saying the process is maybe unconstitutional, and my brother is here to, shed more light on this. But I think the process is constitutional. The process is legal. The process is regular. What I think most people are asking, is the motive correct? Because you see, you can put in motion a legal process, but probably the motive and the calculations behind that may not be correct. But in terms of allowing members of parliament to inquire into his conduct, that is constitutional. That's what the law provides. And once they have dealt with it, then they have to hand it over to the Senate. I mean, if they decide to say you cannot step in office, now that the National Assembly has already impeached you, then that would be regular. That would be unconstitutional. So I think it's a regular process going on. And I think that Kenya is really grown, Zainab. I mean, we can go to this level. We can impeach a deputy president. I think Kenyan democratic space has really matured. Mm-hmm. We hope that this issue of people disappearing and the people in power feeling like offended just through a normal democratic process will stop. Let the deputy president be impeached all the way. We hope, many of us hope he survives in the Senate. But let us express our views. That is part of the democratic space. So I believe this is a legal process. It's a constitutional process. But whether it is a genuine constitutional process without any interference in between, that is, I think, where the deputy president has issues with his boss and also with the members of parliament who have impeached him. Yeah.
Right. Wakili Kibe, when you're looking at the constitutionality of the process itself, of course, the deputy president, through his legal experts, have poked holes on the process leading to the National Assembly voting to impeach him. What are your thoughts on the process so far?
I think my thoughts on the process is that we could have done better. And first of all, I agree with my colleague, Mr. Ishmael Nyaribo, that the Constitution does indeed provide for impeachment of state officials. And he's the highest casualty that we are having. We've been having governors and everybody else. During the demonstrations that were going on, during the public civic education, what a public participation forum, you had a lot of Kenyan people saying, we want both of them, not one. So it is an important safeguard to ensure that nobody gets away with three things. One, violations of the law, that is a violation of the Constitution itself. Number two, misconduct. Number three, where there are reasons to believe that you've committed a crime under our laws or our international law. Now, on all those issues, remember, all these are issues that in the ordinary course of business, they are issues that you take before the High Court or courts of law. But impeachment, we say it is a political process for two reasons. Reason number one is that the charges are made, are preferred, as we would say in law, and approved by the National Assembly by a 2/3 vote. and the trial does not take place in court, but in the Senate. That is, so that the only reason would be this, that it is a political process for the simple reason that it is politicians in charge of it, not lawyers, as in the criminal or normal process. But that is where it ends. After all that, remember, you must come up with charges that clearly demonstrate there is a violation of the Constitution or the law or misconduct. Now, we shall say something about the charges on what the lawyer people are calling threshold, whether the accusations against the deputy president
Hold water.
actually hold water. That's a separate argument. But up to where we are, I would say as a constitutional lawyer, the issue of Deputy President Gachagua, strictly speaking to many Kenyans, is an issue of infighting in a tyrant's party, that is UDA. And if they want to devour themselves, very many Kenyans would not have any, would not shed tears for that. But having said that, there are two things that are important to me from the outset. Number one, what is on trial here? What is on trial on the face of it appear to wear the face of Deputy President Gachagua? But I think it is the Constitution of Kenya that is on trial. On trial in the sense that if, for example, you end up impeaching the Deputy President simply because the President who is clearly behind this motion can be able to get 2/3 in the National Assembly and 2/3 in the Senate, it would be the biggest letdown for our constitutions, because it would effectively mean that the president can sack the deputy president. When we said that elect the president together with the president, what the founders of the makers of the constitution wanted to avoid is a situations whereby the person who can assume the presidency and with the nod of the people can just be sacked without justification. So that would have been a serious failure for our constitution. Issue number two, in my view, is the integrity of the institutions that were designed to protect the constitutions. We have already had the National Assembly. Clearly, the Speaker and his deputy were supposed to be impartial. We all know they were not. At the National Assembly, you expected that at the very minimum, the MPs, particularly those who support the motion, would tell us why. But they were voting and they were told. I listened to the entire motion. They were told, come and say your name and say whether you support. And of course the question, and that is why like in most of central Kenya, people have a problem processing it, is for this reason. On what basis for those charges did you say you support? They were not even allowed to say, I support for these reasons. I have followed impeachment proceedings in other countries. And you would say like nearly everybody else is actually standing up and justifying why. Issue number two is at the Senate.
Okay.
At the Senate, the issue of this, that has not taken place. At the Senate, you know, when you have charges, unlike the National Assembly, greater responsibility will be expected of senators. As in if you say, I stole, okay? And the land, like it turned out according to the deputy president, is land that I bought, would you expect the senators to say on what grounds did the deputy president steal a land that he appears to have bought? So it is a big test for the Senate. Finally, the courts. The courts at the end of it all would have to decide the big issue. When the Constitution was made and with the provisions for impeachment, did the makers of the Constitution intend that it is a purely political process in which you just need numbers and nothing else to get your way? Nothing legal.
And by the way, Zainab, before, I mean, this is the last element. You know, we have seen some very renowned lawyers saying, oh, you cannot take this to court. I mean, if the impeachment is done, it is done. And I don't know why, you know, very informed minds sometimes mislead the public. The institution allowed to decide on a dispute of any nature, by the way, is the High Court of Kenya. It is the judiciary. So even if I was a madman, for that matter, I could still go to the court, and the court has to make a decision that I'm a madman, therefore I cannot appear before it, or if I've appeared before it, they must make a finding. So even once this impeachment is done, really, it must be understood that the deputy president has still the chance to test the waters in the courts. Why? Because it then must now be confirmed by the court. For example, what you saw in the National Assembly, the Speaker was actually very intentional in listening to the people who are voting for the impeachment. And once this other team is talking, and there was one particular MP before. I mean, he is interrupted by points of order, points of information. Then when he actually gets the one or half a minute to speak, then he says your time is up. It was so embarrassing if you are watching that. So it is the High Court finally that must now declare if the process was lawful, regular, and constitutionally meets the threshold. Now, in terms of the Senate itself, I think so that we don't embarrass ourselves as a country, the Senate must give the deputy president enough time. Actually, they are wherewithal for him to explain himself, because he is the one in trial. He is the one on trial. So they must give him that, and he, like Council says, giving him the opportunity and the sufficient. By the way, I can easily say that there was no sufficient time for him in the National Assembly.
The 2 hours?
That was not sufficient. I mean, they had the whole day and then they give him 2 hours. If you look at the fair trial under the Constitution, Article 50, 51, and that's not. He needs almost the whole day to respond, and then you're not supposed to respond to generalities. You are supposed to respond one point after the other. And
but he did respond to all of the 11
No, but that was his,
it
it was his choice, by the way.
That's
even
amazing.
during the previous night interview, that was his choice, and I think we commend him for that. But in terms of when you go to the trial chamber, the Senate, you must be asked, it has been alleged, it's like a charge sheet. I mean, it has been said you have 22 companies. You must now demonstrate that I have a right to have 20, 30 companies, and that they are not unlawful, they have paid taxes, this is how I acquired them, and these are the people there, even if it's your children or whoever. So those issues must be extremely, crystallized. And the Senate must be mature enough to actually give him that wherewithal, yeah.
All right. We're going to be taking a short break, but, at the end of it all, what we know is that the High Court has referred this case to the Chief Justice for empanelment of a bench of more than 2 judges. So the question suddenly is, will we be having a legal dilemma considering that this thing is in court and the Senate is going to be, listening to the motion on Wednesday and Thursday this week? Let's take a short break. We're going to be back with this conversation. Stay with us. The hashtag is NTV Weekend Edition.
You have all heard the word Betika, but do you know what Betika really means? To Betika is to climb to the top of the world. To Betika is to get promoted to the next level and to win again and again and again. To Betika is to test the limits of speed and to swing hard at every opportunity. To Betika is to do the impossible. It is possible with Betika.
Welcome to Betika, the home of champions.
Acne-prone skin, marks? Stop. Try new Garnier Charcoal Serum with 4% AHA, BHA and charcoal. The first black serum with no residue. Clinically proven to reduce pimples and acne marks. New Garnier AHA, BHA Charcoal Serum. Approved by dermatologists by Garnier Naturally.
Enjoy all-in-one payment solutions for your business with Network. Accept multiple payment methods and process all your business transactions on one device. Whether it's M-Pesa, Airtel Money, Visa, MasterCard, Apple Pay or Google Pay. Network does it all. It's faster, it's better, it's smarter. Get it for your business today by calling 0730 847 847.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching NTV Weekend Edition as we have a look at the legal intricacies surrounding the impeachment of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. In studio, I'm joined by Ishmael Nyaribo as well as Kibe Mungai, just to get a legal perspective of this entire process. Now, we know that the High Court has referred the case challenging the Deputy President's impeachment to Chief Justice Martha Koome for an empanelment of a panel of more than 3 judges, I believe. And this was done by High Court Judge Lawrence Mugambi, who agreed that the issues raised in the petition by the DP were weighty and should be considered by that bench of more than 2 judges, and referred them to the CJ to constitute that panel. So is there going to be a legal dilemma when we're looking at the timelines? Let me begin with you, Wakili Kibe. The timelines in the sense that the Senate will be hearing will be taking the impeachment motion, will be hearing from the Deputy President as well on Wednesday and Thursday, with a vote to be taken on Thursday evening. But this process is in court as well, because the Deputy President has appealed for the Senate to halt its impeachment process. What then happens?
I think there have been a number of decisions where the courts, for the most part, have been in favor that if a matter is pending in a coordinate arm of government, like in this case the Senate or Parliament,
right,
that process should be allowed to be concluded, and all the other issues can be taken up during the court process. Mm-hmm. So that my thinking is that the Senate will complete its process this week. The Senate, the numbers in the Senate would have given the Deputy President a fighting chance, in the sense that in the sense that there are not very many. There is also the sense that you get a little bit more mature people who, minus party whipping, are likely, on a good day, likely to say those charges are bogus. But with party whipping, today we were told Adani is a good deal. I don't think Adani is a good deal. So if that is the mindset, I think the fate of Deputy President Gachagua is more or less sealed politically. But since you've asked about time, there's something I need to say about time. We've had impeachment. You know, this thing of impeachment is coming from other countries like the US. The Constitution of Kenya does not provide, for example, the time, apart from the end of impeachment, that this is supposed to happen. The standing orders could have provided better procedures in terms of timelines for it to do its job, and for Kenyans to have proper public participation. Some cases relates to that public participation. Like, for example, did the people have notice? Because you impeach, you prefer the charges on Tuesday, you go to public participation on Friday, even before Kenyans have read even what is against the deputy. And after he gave his views, was the matter referred to the people now to say, now that we've heard both sides of the story, are we going to support this or not? And even the process itself in the National Assembly. Remember, there is this what they are calling the instruments of impeachment. Now, those instruments of impeachment, for example, would be a record that the Deputy President came here, we heard him, we heard views from the people. During the day, and I believe all of you witnessed this, you heard that because the previous day it appeared that the Deputy President had successfully been able to demonstrate these charges are bogus, the following day in Parliament, you saw people talk about treason, it's not in the charges. People talk about women, it's not amongst the charges. People talk about the Deputy President stealing the property of his late brother, it is not in the charges. So that you heard people talk about everything else in town except what were in the charges. So that at the end of the day, one would really want to see how will the Senate treat a record from the High Court that is so bare and that never really interrogated the issues for the day. How will it react to a scenario whereby people are voting, excuse the phrase, voting like sheep practically? Like you just stand up, you don't say, I have read the charges, understood them, and I am supporting them. That was not permitted. And this is a constitutional process. These are legal issues. In law, you say, if somebody came to court, the prosecutor said nothing about the charges because these were like prosecutors and the witnesses, then it would be very difficult to convict. Now, the actual court doing the conviction is the Senate. But what is its record? In future, I hope that the standing orders, and they are being challenged, I believe, about their constitutionality. You cannot treat the removal of a deputy president like a public emergency, like you are doing it within 14 days. Even a chicken thief in this country is not tried within a month.
Indeed, and I'm asking you really about the timeline because, look, if this impeachment sails through the Senate, then the president has, like you talked about, the 14 days constitutionally given to nominate a new replacement. What would that mean then? The deputy president is in the court. Does that delay the president from nominating this new deputy president?
Yeah, obviously, if the court had to intervene and, of course, issue a temporary order or an order of some kind, obviously, it really, crashes into that time, and obviously, the time does not run. In short, the 14 days then would have to start operating again when that particular order is lifted. I think that's the position. So now, you know what, Zainab, this thing, we are dealing with a very big monster. In fact, it's an animal. Once it's allowed into our compound, we may not be able to know how to remove it from our compound. What I mean is, you're now playing with, we want to impeach the deputy president. And it's, of course, a democratic right. But I think the problem with being arrogant is you do not understand how the ripple effect, the way it can bounce back on you. You see, you are telling citizens that, hey, by the way, we tried to impeach William Ruto when he was deputy president. We were not able for some reasons. Now that is past. But today, we can now impeach the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. You see, you are lowering the standard for removing people from office automatically. You are trying to say that after this, we can also test waters with how to impeach anyone else.
But you both said this is more of a political process than a legal process.
But when Kenyans see these things and they react, this is a political process. It's not necessarily a court process or a charge process for that matter.
Right.
So they can easily, and you've seen Kenyans today, they even have, some roadside Kamukunji, the parliament of the people. They can actually come up. Because when I look at how did it start with Gachagua? I can't remember. All I know is that he has been... there's been lynching, and they're saying we must impeach him. Then now they are saying, oh, you know how bad he is, like he said. Now they're also remembering he had a brother who passed on and all that. And that's not part of the allegation in the impeachment. So we had better be more careful as a country, because tomorrow it can be anyone. In fact, if you listen to the impeachment allegations against the deputy president, anyone else, through the clips, social media never forgets, they're all there. If somebody just wanted to pick anyone and say, now we want to impeach him too, this is where you will see people have to disappear. This is where you will see now, retaliations on opponents and enemies. And there is no need for this country actually to put ourselves in this mess. So I believe the Senate really must give the deputy president ample and enough time for him to explain his case. And then they must be honest enough such that if any of the matter were to go to court, really, the court must agree with the Senate, in the sense that they have listened to each allegation and they have actually accepted that the deputy president practically breached the law, whether local, or international. And honestly, we are all in this country. That has not happened. What is happening is vendetta and of course, personal grudges and all that. And everybody's trying to Christianize it to look like it's really a legal process. This evening, the former prime minister, actually, a highly respected gentleman, politician in this country, just mentioned something about Adani. And we are not going there, but I just want to show you how people can just pick any net and they try to justify something. Adani has not gone through public participation. Adani has not met the conditions under the PPP Act.
There are many concerns
surrounding there's nothing.
Right?
He has just resurfaced from somewhere and they have said, who is that? That's Adani, yes. Oh, who did he speak to? Oh, he spoke to, he has, don't talk about him. Just give him the contract. What is that? What is that? And because the statement has come from a person in the name of Raila Odinga, it will be difficult to actually now try to, again, oppose that Adani. But Is Adani helping the country? How do we know that? If it is subjected to the proper procurement process and the PPP Act. If that has not happened, it doesn't matter how nice or how great or how, whatever kind of reputation he has. It matters that Kenyans must go through the democratic process as they have chosen in their laws.
Okay.
And that's what we are saying for the deputy president. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. This gentleman must be given his time in the Senate.
Okay.
And then everybody in the Senate should appear to be mature enough to actually politely entertain him and listen to him carefully, because it's not really now about Rigathi Gachagua. It's about the Constitution and what we might bring into the space of democracy in our country.
And we'll be having more hours there in front of the Senate and even witnesses. But really then, what is the scope of judicial oversight in, looking at this impeachment case? Then how then the courts will be able to assess the legitimacy of the deputy president's claims?
The issue is this, even I say something, then I answer direct to your questions. Huh? The issue is this, that when for example, the Senate, you commented that these are political process, therefore, the Senate, like the politicians, can almost do anything they want. The truth is they cannot, because it is actually circumscribed. Like you are told, this is what you can decide. Prefer charges. On those charges, make a proper convictions. The court have always said you must have a basis. If today you are in Nairobi and they say the Zainab murdered somebody in Lamu, on the face of it, those charges preferred anywhere, and people saw you on national television at about 10 p.m., it will not meet the threshold. And to put it in more dramatic words, there is the issue of you bought 2 hotels in Nyeri, correct? Treetop, he has said it's a lease, you can't buy, it's KWS property. The other property, he may have of 600 million. To have 600 million or 300 million on the face of it is not a crime, okay? The suspicion that it could be money from a crime is one thing. But for you to convict, to say this is proceeds of crime, you must say where was the deal that gave Gachagua this 600 million. So the Senate would be limited to actually making a finding. Have the National Assembly brought to you a proper basis for you to conclude that the 600 million they are talking about was obtained unlawfully? That is beyond suspicion. Now, that is how tough it will be at the Senate. Now, coming back to the issues of the courts, the guarantee, when you say the right to fair trial, and in Kenya under Article 25 of the Constitutions, alongside torture and alongside the right to habeas corpus, and that's why there are all these things of abductions, that is a right that you cannot even suspend, even when Kenya is officially in a state of emergency. So it is because of that, and when the Senate will be determining to decide on the guilt or otherwise of the deputy president, the Senate would be sitting as a lower tribunal that is answerable at the end of the day to a higher tribunal, which is the High Court, which has to decide, did you actually meet the threshold? If the deputy president says, as he has already said in the cases he has filed, by the way, that his rights have been violated, or the rights of other Kenyans and the sovereignties of Kenyans has been trifled with by the process in the National Assembly, that the speakers were not free and fair, and that is why they gave unfair directions and all that, and it is on record, all that they were saying before the process commenced, those would be very serious issues for the courts. And therefore, in Kenya, that is why we say the ultimate defender, the guardian of the Constitution, it is the High Court, because that is where you say this process, the law has been violated, the Constitution has been violated. If the High Court decides in his favor, anybody else can appeal to the higher courts, the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. Right. And therefore, in short, in my view, there is definitely going to be legal drama if the Constitution is to be enforced. And that is where you are hearing people, some of them wearing the title of professors, but it is disastrous in this country that when it comes to some political issue, you can really argue against basic positions of the constitutions just to achieve a political preference, that you want the deputy presidents to go home and perhaps a friend of yours who could be your client to become the deputy president.
Okay.
It is really tragic.
All right, I want us to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll continue and wind up on the conversation, and then we'll be getting into some more news stories we've lined up for you. Stay with us.
Doors should not hold out opportunities. Doors are the gateways to progress, the ones that hold ideas, and those that close deals. Let's take those to places where there are none. Let's open big doors that harbor progress. In all the places that we are,
KCB ni yangu.
KCB ni yetu.
KCB is mine.
KCB ni yetu. For people, for better.
Babies play around and then, oops, Morphix ina absorb like whoop. Imagine, haiwezi leak in 50 different movements. Makofi to both babies and Morphix. Renewed Morphix, ultimate quality. Babies play around and then, oops, Morphix ina absorb like whoop. Imagine, haiwezi leak in 50 different movements. Makofi to both babies and Morphix. Renewed Morphix, ultimate quality.
All right, thanks for staying with us as we continue with the conversation surrounding the impeachment motion against Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and the legal intricacies surrounding it. Indeed, Wakili Ishmael, when you're looking at what the Deputy President said, he said he's going to fight tooth and nail and he's prepared to fight this impeachment. He now leaves it at the hands of the judiciary. Now, if the Deputy President successfully obtains a court order to stop the impeachment proceedings, if this is a possibility, what are then the constitutional implications of the legislative process? Because that is continuing, it has happened. The National Assembly adopted the motion, they impeached the Deputy President by adopting that motion. But now it's at the Senate, the legislative process is taking shape. But so what happens if the court decides otherwise?
Yeah, I think also the Deputy President should not quickly despair and resign himself to what the court will decide. It's still early. He still has his day in the Senate.
Right.
Despite all the feeling that the Senate is also captured, just like the Parliament, like the National Assembly, I think that the President should have enough confidence in the Senate either way. Because also, as they argue this, since it is televised nationally and it's live, we are also making our own, deduction. We are understanding what's going on. We are also making our own conclusions. But you ask, what then will happen with the legislative process?
Right.
Of course, 100%, everybody knows today, except those who are friends of the president and probably some people who are sympathizers of the members of parliament, everyone knows that they pushed Rigathi Gachagua actually and procedural. Even the enemies of, or opponents, so to say, of Rigathi Gachagua, they know that he was actually pushed. So the moment the High Court issues an injunction or an order of any kind, like I said, definitely that the whole legislative process, I mean, will be in big doubt. It will be considered, its credibility will be questioned, because then everyone now will, Kenyans are very emotive and they really swing into what is popular at the moment. So if the court decides, no, there's an issue over here, then Rigathi Gachagua gets quite a huge following immediately. And what happens to the legislative process in the National Assembly, of course, it will be affirming, that decision will be affirming that they did completely shoddy work and they almost, really did nothing. And at the Senate level, it will also appear that actually even the Senate has also been taken down the drain in the same way the National Assembly misconducted its affairs.
If they vote the same way.
Yeah, I'm saying, if they vote, so that the deputy president goes to court.
Now, we don't have any precedent when it comes to impeaching a deputy president. Just looking at perhaps parallels with the county governors, there have been precedents where the Senate decisions on impeachment of county governors have been overturned by the court. So could this be a possibility
in
the case of the deputy president?
Yeah, previously, Karanja, the deputy to Moi that time, impeachment actually happened, if you ask me.
No, but that was a vote of no confidence.
But that's the point. I mean,
different.
There was no way they were going to, if Moi said something or the head of state said something, really, it was as good as the law. Yeah, it was impeachment, I agree. But
a vote of no confidence.
They were removed from office as well, because obviously the members of parliament again were remotely controlled by the head of state at that time. And the feeling was that cannot happen in the new 2010 constitution. So, but that is happening today. So, is it happening in the right way, like members of parliament are mature and there is credibility in the whole process? No, we don't think so. Yeah, we don't think
the interesting thing, that's a good question you've asked. Huh? First of all, the distinctions between a vote of no confidence and impeachment is that impeachment is actually a constitutional process, more or less a court process, a legal process, but in the hands of the politicians. But a vote of no confidence is purely a political process. It would have been enough, like appears to be in this case, to say we don't like this guy is arrogant, this guy doesn't get along with people. Those are reasons enough for a vote of no confidence. But there would not be reasons enough for impeachment, because those political grounds alone are not legal issues. Now, coming to the issues of the precedents, when you go to a country like America, which is where we got this kind of presidential system, you'd actually see, and I am not aware, I think I've read one case a long time ago where a deputy president was impeached. Many times, most of the motions of impeachment have been against the president. What's the reason for that? The reasons from that is that in the US, under the US constitutions, just like in Kenya, the deputy president does not wield executive power, because it is a wielding of executive power that you run a ministry, that you are responsible for government projects, that you can probably say, as a law enforcer, you breached this or the other law. And the charges against the deputy president actually confirms one thing in his favor, whichever way it goes. It confirms that he was an outsider. Because in a government that is so corrupt, that many people conservative believed has stolen more than $1 trillion shillings over the last, an outsider, yes. An outsider means this. I believe Nyaribo will get this. In what sense? Because that, no, let me explain.
All right.
That you're in government, and this is something I know to some extent personally, certain facts.
Okay.
That you're in government, yes, but you do not make any decision, or you are not responsible for anything that matters. Of course, it is one thing to go there to introduce the president. It is one thing to fight alcohol. It is another thing to be responsible for coffee.
But we've seen the deputy president handles different roles that actually it is the president who gave him those roles. And he said, you're not just going to be, a ceremonial deputy president,
that is what he said. But as I'm saying today, in a country of mega deals, big projects, he was chasing Chang'aa people. and illicit brew. Those are the kind of things he was doing. And that is why, even when it came to preferring charges, you could not see that he was responsible for anything where he could commit a crime.
Don't you think it's unfair for you to say that, looking at the fact that Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and President William Ruto came on a joint ticket, they had the same agenda and they sold the Kenya Kwanza manifesto on the same platform. So how, at what point was he an outsider in the same government that he formed?
After he was elected, you know, it's one thing, you can be elected, but for example, we know, let me use a practical example. We know Oscar Sudi calls more shots than Deputy President. And that if you want something done under this government, calling Murkomen and calling Sudi would get you further than calling Gachagua. Ask anybody who knows about this government, will confirm to you that. This guy was an outsider.
Okay, yes, Kibe is saying something in another language, but I will also clarify that I think anybody who comes to State House comes with so many imaginations, but he realizes sooner or later that he's actually captured. You know, like, there's a cabal or cartel of people who actually determine what happens. Probably control the president's timetable, see what he has to do, who he has to see today or who he has to see tomorrow. So I think slowly, but I don't think William Ruto wanted to differ necessarily from the word go with his deputy. But the way things mutate and the way things go around the presidency and the State House, I think without him knowing, he must have been dropped just like a hot potato, and he only comes to realize that, like he said it himself, that he realized that now he's even removed from the WhatsApp groups, and then sooner or later he cannot just drive to State House, he has to make a phone call, and the people allowing him to meet the president, he starts to wonder. So
in your analysis,
yes, it is
where
true.
was the point of departure?
No, I mean, we have been told there's business problem, we've been told he wanted, I don't know, he wanted some is it payment for what he invested in? You know, all those, I don't think they're even part of the impeachment issue. But the truth of the matter is that he has been relegated to where he is, and that is why that gap has
the fallout, I would tell you where the fallout was.
You're privy to that information?
To some fair extent, from one side of it. And the basic fallout was this. The basic fallout was a pure Machiavellian political calculation. If you allow the words, the calculations was this. To get elected, I need the Kikuyus and their leaders. To get re-elected, I will have another political formation. This is what it's all about. When all is said and done.
This is your interpretation.
Not interpretation. I know a bit of that is exactly the issue, at least from one side, and with that you can support it with other evidence that the whole agenda, you know, you read history, and the easiest way to read history is this. What was the probability that William Ruto, once he ascended into office, he will be very happy governing Kenya for 10 years in alliance with the Kikuyus and their leaders?
Well, you know, I feel like then that would be heading into a different side of...
No, I'm saying you've asked a question.
Right, I have.
And you must tell the correct reasons.
All right.
Those are the correct political reasons.
Okay. Allow me to bring us back to the legal issues, right? So as we wind up on this conversation, and we've said, like, suddenly this is not just a legal process, but a political one, right? So then what do you foresee then in the political landscape, especially ahead of 2027, finally, Ishmael?
Yeah, I think William Ruto wants to quote Raila Odinga more than actually we were thinking. I think he probably wants to ask him, hey, who do you think I can propose as the new deputy? And Raila Odinga, of course, will automatically, you know, tell him, let's try Nyanza this time, let's try Gladys Wanga, let's try, you know, somebody else from, he definitely would not propose Musalia Mudavadi. Musalia Mudavadi would be Ruto's own choice. And I think that Kimani Ichung'wah and the group will tell him, Your Excellency, you cannot take this thing away from Central again, or it's going to bring then bad blood, you know, we are already wounded. And, you know, so I think, and then we must understand who is William Ruto. He has where he is going, and he wants to go there, by all means, at all cost. So then you will give him all this opinion from here, from that quarter, but he will use the Moi machinations to ensure that he probably throws the ball again back to you, to Raila, to the Mount Kenya people. And you might find people like Kibe actually now, again, endearing themselves to him. I know he's not a politician, but you might find Mount Kenya people now, again, they really want to stay with him because he probably has given them the chance to crucify Rigathi Gachagua, but then appoint or nominate a person from their midst. So it is kind of a bit cloudy at the moment, but I am sure that William Ruto is not stopping at Mount Kenya alone. He knows he has lost a bit of ground there. He will be going to anywhere. It does not surprise anyone, even if he says he's going to coast, but because of the numbers, he may have to restrict his selection from Western or Nyanza regions. Yes.
You would foresee political realignments ahead of 2027. So even if the deputy president does survive this impeachment, it's already a vote of no confidence on him in the same government that he's serving. But certainly will be quite interesting to see.
But that's the healing place. If he can then, if he survives, but goes deeper into Mount Kenya and says, Kwani, did your mothers not give birth to other sons? And he convinces them that way, maybe, yes, he may lose his support but gain the rest of Mount Kenya still, yes.
All right. Final thoughts, Wakili Kibe, 2027 shaping up, and we can see the political temperatures, also coming up. What do you foresee?
Things. Number one, let me confirm, like you said, I've got no interest in politics. I just want to remain a constitutional lawyer. That's a constant for me.
All right.
Now, having said that, the reality of the matter, number one, is that William Ruto, you give the devil his due. He knows how to read politics. The fallout is not really one between him and Gachagua. It is a fallout with the grassroots. And this has been boiling for a while. Okay. The removal of Gachagua is just the last stroke in a fallout that has been happening. So I don't think he will try to appease the Mount Kenya base. In any case, in Mount Kenya, I don't think the deputy presidency is a big thing, because you can get a deputy president like you've had for 2 years. But ask people, you can do that tomorrow. What has the deputy president and even other cabinet secretaries been able actually to push in Ruto's government? And the answer you get will be real.
But the names we've seen, coming up and proposed, definitely names as, potential replacements.
I'm going to that. It is one thing, and the media is the one that is giving this. You can talk about Waiguru, about Kindiki. They will come there purely as agents and partners of President Moi, rather than representatives of the people. President Ruto, rather than the representative of the people from Central Kenya. Issue number 2 that is important is this. What I oppose is not even Ruto per se. What I oppose as Kibe Mungai is a scenario whereby the 2010 Constitution is actually overthrown politically for practical purposes, and you get back authoritarianism. This dictatorship that is building up slowly in Kenya, its linchpin is a chama known as UDA. Now, the troubles you are having in UDA, from a pure constitutional point of view, is a good thing. It weakens dictatorship. Now, for reasons number 3 is this. I believe that a coalition is being built. This coalition at the National Assembly, you have already seen from impeachment, it has about 300 people. In the Senate, we shall see whether they are 30 or 40. But what would be the true usage of this political coalition? Because remember, Gachagua could have been left there for 5 years without anything big changing. But the big thing about the coalition that would evolve from the Gachagua impeachment would be this. There is a bill to change the constitution, okay? There is the Adani deals. This is where the real thing will be about the coalition that is coming out from this impeachment. So and that is what worries me.
So your perspective is that all this is a smoke screen, perhaps, for other things that are happening?
In a big way, I don't think Gachagua would have, except that Ruto wants to trade with his position for purposes of 2027. You know, in the old constitution, Moi and to some little extent Jomo Kenyatta, they used to trade with the deputy president. That, for example, today, the reality is this. Because of the small expanded government, today he's getting a lot of votes from Luo Nyanza. Today, the suffering that is there, everybody feeling, you would say, other people who are not there would say, I take offense that the prices of petrol and Adani is going on. People now who says that suddenly our people are in government recently, they would say, no, it's our government, let things increase a bit. So that changes the dynamics of politics. But at the end of the day, let me put it this way, what comes out of all this process, like I said at the start, would be the trial of the Constitution and the various organs that are supposed to protect it. National Assembly has failed. We are waiting to see Senate.
Has it?
It has already
yes,
failed.
it has.
In a big way.
It's true.
We are waiting for the Senate and the courts.
Okay.
I hope they will not let the 2010 constitutions to be destroyed like it happened in the other constitution in the 1960s.
All right.
That's my honest hope.
And certainly the ball is in the court of the Senate and the courts, and our legal experts have a view on the legalities surrounding the impeachment of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. We'll be seeing what happens in this coming week. Thank you so much, Lawyer Kibe Mungai, constitutional lawyer, as well as Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate of the High Court. We appreciate your time. And time to have a look at what's been happening in the world of sports.